Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. On behalf of the U.S. Census Bureau, I would like to welcome each of you to this event, which marks the grand opening of the Nebraska Area Census Office. My name is Mark Allensworth with the U.S. Census Bureau, and I'm the manager for the office in Lincoln, which covers the entire state. To help set the tone for our ribbon-cutting ceremony is Daniel Martinez, who will be singing the national anthem. Daniel is originally from Iquitos, Peru. He is a music instructor at Union College in Lincoln, is featured on the Nebraska Arts Council touring roster, and among other accomplishments has performed in Central America, Canada, and across the United States. Would you please rise for the national anthem? Thank you. You may be seated. And thank you, Daniel, for helping us inaugurate this office. This office is known as the Nebraska Area Census Office, or ACO, and is one of 248 census offices nationwide. We are part of a massive effort that is underway in preparation for the 2020 census count. The Nebraska office will support and manage the 2020 census statewide field operations. This includes recruiting and hiring field staff from across the state, as well as IT, administrative, and field operations support for those employees. I am happy to share with everybody that we just completed address canvassing operation last week, which is one of several efforts used to ensure the Census Bureau has the most accurate address list available. While the census is a nationwide effort, its success relies on local support. The Area Census Office, staffed by Nebraska residents, will provide important knowledge and connections that will help tackle the unique challenges of completing the census operations in Nebraska. We have invited you here to help us celebrate this grand opening and to hear from key leaders about the 2020 census, what it means to them, their organizations, their community, and to all Nebraskans. Before I introduce them, I would like to make several acknowledgments. First, do we have anybody from the Nebraska congressional delegation here? Okay, didn't want to skip anybody. They are coming to the afternoon. Great, thank you. Next, I'd like to thank all of our Nebraska operations and partnership team for their work in coordinating this event, and most importantly, for working with organizations to gain their support. All who work for the Area Census Office or Census, or who serve on a partnership, would you please stand up? I guess everyone is standing up, or wave. Yep. Thank you for your commitment and passion Thank you for your commitment and your passion you put into your work every day. I would also like to take a moment and thank the proud partners of the 2020 Census who contributed to this event and who are supportive in so many ways we don't have time to list them all. Would representatives from the following please stand or wave as I mention your organization? The City of Lincoln. Great, thank you. The Lancaster County 2020 Census Complete Count Committee. Yep. Thank you. The Lincoln Community Foundation. Welcome, thank you. The Nebraska National Guard. The Lincoln Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Todd. The Nebraska Latino American Commission. Thank you. And the University of Nebraska's Omaha Center for Public Affairs Research. A sincere thank you to all of you for your support. We couldn't have done this without your help. We wish to extend a warm welcome to all Complete Count Committee representatives in attendance today. You were on the front lines of our outreach and efforts from one end of the state to the other, and we appreciate the hard work you all are doing out in the field. We are all on the same team, working towards Nebraska getting its best census ever. With that, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Mr. Dow Nguyen is no novice to giving of his time to serve a country or his community. He served in the Vietnamese Navy prior to coming to the United States before the fall of Saigon, served as an interpreter and translator at a camp and a camp leader in Guam until coming to the U.S. mainland. After arriving in Lincoln, his commitment to service continued in different ways by working with the Vietnamese community to open up businesses, has served as a translator and interpreter, and currently continues to provide information to the Vietnamese community through local radio station. We are delighted to have him join us as a leader of the Vietnamese community in Lincoln with connections in other areas of the state. Would you please help me welcome Mr. Nguyen?
I'm a little bit sick for a few days, so I need some water, please. Ladies and gentlemen, as the president of the Vietnamese community of Lincoln, and also as a supporter of the past census 10 years ago, I would like to have a few words to you about the importance of the 2020 census, which is coming soon. We might wonder why it is important for us in our community, in our active participation in this program. Before telling you what I think, I did ask some friend of mine some questions, something like that. What is the census for? And what is its importance? Surprisingly, most of them said that its only purpose is just a calculation of people to keep the population of the whole nation up to date. Some of them went a little further, saying that it also tells us statistics of different races with the increase or decrease of population, And surprise, nobody knows for sure what is important to the three sector: business, government, and resident. And nobody can understand how it impacts our future of democracy and the health of the community, So that's the reason why I explained to them. And what I explained to them, I try to say a little bit here with you. Ladies and gentlemen, based on accurate count of people, business sector can use the census data to decide where to build a factory, store, and offices. These will definitely create jobs, and consequently reducing the unemployment. The real estate developer and city planner also can use the data to plan new home and improve neighborhood. A local government official can use the census data to ensure public safety and plan a new school and hospital. States can use the census data for rerolling congressional and legislature and school district. Residents can use the census data to support community initiatives involving legislation, quality of life, and consumer advocacy. Importantly, I mentioned to them, at stake is the redistribution of $675 billion in federal bill funding. The lead city of Lincoln will use the census data to receive funding for infrastructure, including city street and many sewer, a lot of things. So I think Asian and other communities will benefit having a fair share with what the city like Lincoln, Omaha, and so on, can improve in three sectors mentioned above. However, only a full and accurate count can provide state, city, and county government with the data they need to fund those improvements. To achieve it, I think all community leaders need to explain to the people the importance of the census, as I mentioned above, and also encourage them to fully participate in the counting process to attain the goal of 100% accuracy. I was the supporter of the previous, census, so I know how important they are. That's all my thinking. Thank you very much for your listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dow, for taking the time to join us today. You are one of the trusted voices of the community, and we continue to reach out to leaders in the Asian community throughout all of Nebraska. We want to ensure every person is counted, so we will look to you for assistance to reach the Vietnamese community. Thank you again. Now I'd like to introduce one of Nebraska's most esteemed leaders, Ms. Judy Koshkubas. She has served as the Executive Director of the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs since 1995 and is the National Leader on Native Issues. She is an enrolled member of the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska and is working with the U.S. Census Bureau to ensure all federally recognized tribes with headquarters in Nebraska, tribal organizations throughout the state, are aware of the importance of the census. In addition to Judy's commitment to serving on local boards and state advisory boards, she also is a key influencer on national efforts, such as serving on the U.S. Census Advisory Board. Without further delay, here's Judy Koshkubas.
Ampatu washte, wiblaho. I said welcome in my Santee language, and thank you all for being here in my Ponca language. Welcome to the homelands. You are here where our First Peoples are, so it's appropriate that the First Peoples be counted, and I'm dedicated to making sure that Indian country is counted in the census. As you heard, I've been in this position for 23 years, so I'm thinking back 10 years ago, working with Todd Wilchin on the census then, and thinking, what has happened in the last 10 years? Well, I'm really excited to say that our work in the last 10 years has raised and shone the spotlight on our First Peoples through the story of Ponca Chief Standing Bear. And even though in that trial of 1879, where we were recognized as humans for the first time, we weren't citizens until 1924. When my mother was born in the United States of America as a Ponca, she was not a citizen of the United States of America. So today we celebrate that we have Standing Bear here on Statuary Hall and recently in the U.S. Capitol in Statuary Hall. So that is really a wonderful accomplishment for Native people. But yet our Native women and children are still murdered and missing at a higher rate than anyone in America. And I think this census count is really going to be important in focusing that our lives matter. We are hard to count, but we say we're invisible no longer. So I'd just like to say to everybody here, Daniel, that was a beautiful song. Our agency, the Indian Commission, we are working with the tribes, and I want to thank Harmon Maples, our Native American liaison, who came and presented to the Indian Commission recently. And the challenges that Indian people face in America being hard to count, partly is due to isolation, location, and a lack of trust with the United States government. So many of our treaties, most of our treaties were broken. So to get our people to want to participate, and then what are we going to do with the data? How will this improve our lives? And truly it will, because Indian people, our funding is based on those treaties. So we get funding from the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Indian Health Service. And every count, every person, that increases the funding that we receive. And as we go forward and we apply for grants beyond our funding, that's very inadequate, those numbers will help us. So I really want to thank all of you for being here, and I hope as you go out in your communities that you remember the First Peoples and make sure that our lives matter and our vote counts. And I think that we have a great team here. It's great to see so much diversity in Lincoln, Nebraska. I rarely walk into a room and see so much diversity. So way to go, team. And whatever our Indian Commission can do and our tribes can do to help others, we want to be good partners as the First Peoples and make sure that America stays the great place that it has always been. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. We know the Nebraska Commission on Indian Affairs was one of the key partners in the 2010 census, and with your support, we'll make great strides to get the best 2020 census count ever in tribal communities. At this point, we're going to change up the program a little bit. DJ, we're going to push you down a little bit. The Lieutenant Governor's time is limited with us this morning. So next, I would like to share with you that the City of Lincoln partnered with the Census Bureau early on, as far back as February 2017, for the 2020 census kickoff at the Nebraska State Capitol. In coordination with Lancaster County, the city has since formed a complete count committee focusing on the hardest to count areas. We have with us today yet another strong supporter of a complete count, the 52nd mayor of the city of Lincoln. Mayor Gaylord Byrd was elected in May of 2019, and previously she served for 6 years as a member of the City Council and 6 years as the Lincoln-Lancaster County Planning Commissioner. She is also a true servant leader as she serves on higher education, foundation, and nonprofit boards. Mayor Gaylord Baird will be reading a proclamation from the City of Lincoln in support of the 2020 census. Would you please help me welcome the mayor?
Thank you, Mark, and congratulations to everyone who's made this day possible, and I'm especially proud of our city team who's done so much to support the effort. And the goal of the census is to, quote, count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. And that sounds pretty straightforward and simple, but of course we all know that that's actually quite a significant challenge. And one of the ways we take on that challenge is to form complete count committees. And I want to thank City Council member Benny Shope, who's here today. Benny, raise your hand. And County Commissioner Sean Flowerday for heading up the Joint City-County Complete Count Committee. Say that 5 times fast. That committee has been meeting and working since January, and it hosted a Census Solutions workshop for the community in September. Committee members are working with the Census Bureau to improve the response rates, particularly for those hard-to-count populations in our community. I want to commend the U.S. Census Bureau for investing in the kinds of technology that will help us reach our goal and do just that. One example is that the 2020 census will be the first to allow the survey to be completed online. And that ease of access is critical because the census is so important. And here are 2 main reasons why. The results are used to determine representation in elected government at the federal, state, and local levels. And the census is used to determine the distribution of federal funds for 10 years. So for cities and local governments in particular, the census has a monumental effect on our access to resources that make a difference in our residents' quality of life. And how big of a difference does it make? Well, you might think that missing just one person in the census doesn't really matter. The census numbers tell a different story. It's estimated that one missed resident means the loss of $2,100 per year. That's $21,000 over 10 years. So if you get out your calculator and check, if we fail to count 1,000 people in Lincoln, just 0.3% of our estimated population, that could cost our community $21 million over 10 years. And that's $21 million that could have been used for public health, for our parks, for public transit, for education, and to fix our streets. Those things matter to our quality of life here in Lincoln. The good news is that local governments have an advantage when it comes to reaching out to our residents. And according to the U.S. News and World Report, emails to residents from local governments have a much higher engagement rate than emails from a federal government agency. And that's another reason that the work of our local Complete Count Committee in cooperation with the Census Bureau is so important. We need to work together to spread the word that this is our census, and all of us have a stake in the outcome. Our nation's founders saw a complete and accurate census as a foundational pillar of our democracy, and participation is as patriotic as voting, and it's a responsibility that all of us need to take seriously. So that way, government will work better for all of our people. So congratulations again on opening this office, and thank you everyone here to your commitment for a complete and accurate count. And at this time, I would like to issue a proclamation declaring October as Census Month in Lincoln. And here's what it says. Whereas the U.S. Constitution requires that a census be taken every 10 years, and the next federal census will be taken on April 1st, 2020, and whereas the census determines the apportionment of seats in the U.S. House of Representatives and the Nebraska Legislature, and is the basis for the allocation of billions of dollars in federal, state, and county funds, and whereas the census also is used to make decisions about locating schools, daycares, senior centers, hospitals, and other facilities, as well as decisions about business growth and jobs, and whereas participating in the census is safe, easy, and confidential, and federal law prohibits any public or private agency from gaining access to confidential census data, and whereas the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County are committed to a full and accurate census count and have formed a broad-based complete count committee to work toward a full and accurate count of our community. And whereas October 15th, 2019 marks the opening of the Lincoln Area Census Office of the U.S. Census Bureau, now therefore I, Gaylord Baird, Mayor of the City of Lincoln, Nebraska, do hereby proclaim October 2019 as Census Month to encourage all residents to participate fully in the 2020 census and to support the U.S. Census Bureau to help ensure a full and accurate count. This to you.
Thank you, Mayor, for helping us bring awareness to the importance of getting everybody counted. A proclamation serves as a public endorsement in support of the 2020 census, and we encourage other communities to do the same. To date, Omaha, Grand Island, South Sioux City, Sarpy County, and now Lincoln have issued proclamations. We look forward to serving Nebraska while operating out of your city. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, who is representing the state of Nebraska, I would like to inform everyone here today that state government offices have been very supportive of our work, especially when it comes to the census job promotion and census awareness. The fact that we have our top two leaders from state government serving as keynote speakers for our grand opening events today are strong messages of support. While the Lieutenant Governor is here with us this morning, Governor Pete Ricketts will be speaking today at the 2020 Census Press Conference to be held at the University of Nebraska's Omaha Community Engagement Center at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Both of these events with our top two leaders will help us set the tone for the months to come. Now I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Mr. Mike Foley became the Lieutenant Governor in 2015 after being elected to the position as running mate of Governor Pete Ricketts. Prior to that, he served 2 terms as the Nebraska Auditor of Public Accounts from 2007 through 2015. And before that, he served 6 years in the Nebraska unicameral legislature as a state senator for the 29th District in South Lincoln. While in the legislature, he served on various committees, including appropriation, banking, transportation, and judiciary. Before moving to Nebraska, he lived in Washington, D.C. for 20 years, where he was the Director of Financial Analysis for the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. Here you have him, the Honorable Mike Foley.
Thank you, Mark. Well, thank you, Mark, for that kind introduction, and welcome, everybody. What a great pleasure to be with you today. A special warm welcome to our guest, Dennis Johnson from the Census Bureau in Denver. Dennis has got a really big job. He's got 12 states to be responsible for. So, Dennis, when the books are closed on the 2020 census, I want you to be able to say, Nebraska was my best state. We're going to get it right in Nebraska. So, Dennis, welcome to Nebraska. We're delighted to have you with us, and thanks for letting us juggle the program just a little bit. I've got another event off in North Lincoln that I've got to get to fairly shortly. But it is a pleasure to be with you today, and as was mentioned by Mark, the governor will be speaking this afternoon at the Omaha event. As we all know, Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution mandates that we conduct a census to count every single person every 10 years. The first census was led by Thomas Jefferson, and it took place in 1790, and included 13 states, and they counted a total population of 4 million people. That year, New York City, our premier city, had a huge population, 33,000 people. Imagine that, 33,000 people in New York City back in 1790. Now, of course, the census includes all 50 states, District of Columbia, 5 U.S. territories. Our last census counted 308 million people, and this next one will be even larger, no doubt. Our founding fathers obviously knew the importance of having a good, accurate count of every person living in our country. Interestingly, my 6 children all went through school over here at St. Peter's School, about a mile from here. And as 5th graders, they were always given the assignment to prepare a family tree, which is an interesting assignment. We all kind of jumped in and helped out. It was kind of fun to do, looking back at the grandparents, the great-grandparents, as far back as we could get. And you go online, and you look at this fabulous body of data from the Census Bureau. It's really fascinating. You can see your great-grandparents, where they signed in on the census forms and showed who was living, where they were living, who was living in that household, and so forth. It's kind of fun to do. And you look at the 1920 census, the 1910 census, all the data's out there. 1900 census, then you go to the 1890 census. Where is it? Where's the 1890 census? It was conducted properly, and the records were taken to the U.S. Department of Commerce in Washington, D.C., and they were stored safely in the basement of the building. And there was a fire in the building. And tremendous quantities of water were gushed into that building to quench the fire. And all that water went down in the basement, and it soaked the records. We have very little records from the 1890 census. And as you conduct this research on your family trees, you're going to get frustrated, because you can find the 1900, you can find the 1880, but you can't find 1890. And and then you realize, oh my gosh, that data is really, really important to have to trace your family history. So when 5th graders 100 years from now start looking for their great-grandparents, I want them to be able to find me, okay? We're going to do a good job of holding on to those records, and we're going to make sure it's an accurate count. So it just was a very, very vivid reminder to me of how important those census records are. The demographics of our country are just changing remarkably, and this is very, very important. All this gets recorded in our census data. Today, there are 50 million Americans aged 65 and older. Within the lifetimes of my kids, that 50 million is going to become 100 million Americans aged 65 and older. We're going to become a very different country in a short number of years. We're going to become an older nation competing against younger countries with far greater populations. It's going to be a great challenge for us. We're feeling it already. 10 days ago, the U.S. government issued its regular round of unemployment statistics. Nationally, we're down to 3.5% unemployment. Every business I visit with, all across the country, they're saying, send me workers. The birth rate in the United States has never been lower in our history. Typically, when the economy gets a little bit better, the birth rate goes up. It's not happening this time. And demographers are very interested in this. The birth rate keeps going down as the economy gets better. So it's a puzzling thing. And it's going to present great challenges to it. But all this needs to be recorded so that the history of our country is properly written and we can see these trends and study these trends. It's very, very important for our country. It's also very important for political apportionment, as we know. It's interesting to note that for a 40-year period in Nebraska, ending in the 30s, for a 40-year stretch, Nebraska had 6 members in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. 6. Now we're down to 3. What happened? Well, the population shifts over time, and all this gets reflected in our census data. It also reflects in the apportionment of seats for our unicameral legislature, and those seats are moving further and further to the east. The population for 100 years now has been moving from west to east, and we can see it in the numbers in our unicameral legislature. So it's very, very important that every single person gets counted. And Dennis, you got a big job, and we're going to help you get it right. Because as the mayor mentioned, the funding, the census data is built into so many different funding formulas. It's extraordinary how many different decisions are made based on census data. It affects health clinics, fire departments, schools, highways, and so forth. Businesses, as was mentioned earlier, the businesses rely on the census data to know where are the growth areas, where are the areas that are getting less populated and so forth, so they can make sound business decisions. So all this data is really, really needed. We had a tough year in Nebraska this year. And I think we all remember how cold the winter was. It was brutal. I didn't know this at the time until we got into this difficulty. We've got 80,000 miles of rivers in our state. I didn't know that. We have got more miles of river than any other state. So where are these rivers? Well, we got the Elkhorn, we got the Niobrara, the Platte, and the Missouri. I know about those, but there's dozens and dozens and more river streams, and they're all rock solid, frozen with ice this year. And then the great rains came, and the thaws came, and the blocks of ice as big as this room or larger started moving and shifting down those rivers. It took out 15 bridges. 15 bridges. The bridges don't come back overnight. We're still working on those, and we're going to be working on them for a while. More than a third of the miles of the roadways in our state were impassable for a short period of time. The Spencer Dam, which holds back the Niobrara River, burst under the pressure of the ice, sent floodwaters across 3 counties. I mention all of this because census data was used by FEMA to determine where are the population centers, where are we going to send our resources. So it's critically important to get all this right for a variety of federal programs that intersect with our state programs. There's over $675 billion of federal funds that are allocated to the states based on census data. The biggest thing we do in state government is our Medicaid program, bigger than the university's budget. Medicaid's huge, and it's funded roughly half, by state dollars, and roughly half, it changes every year, with federal dollars. And that federal component changes every year. It's based on census data. So we're going to get it right, Dennis. We're going to count everybody. And I want to thank everybody who's working in the census area, Mark and your whole team, and all of your workers that'll be out in the neighborhoods and just working in various communities to make sure everybody gets counted. This is hard work. You know, we've all got smartphones now. And those smartphones are going off all day long, and it's not even people we want to talk to. It's just people want to talk to us, right? And it gets annoying. People stop answering their phones. I can tell you as a politician knocking on doors, people stop answering their doors. It's going to be really hard to track down every single person to get it right because of this great interest in privacy these days. It's an added challenge for us this year that wasn't so much a problem in prior census taking. So we're going to get it right, and we're going to do it the Nebraska way. Thank you all for being here today. What a pleasure to be with you. God bless.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Foley, for your continued support of the 2020 census. At this time, it's my privilege to introduce Dennis Johnson. Dennis is serving as the Deputy Regional Director for the Denver region for the 2020 census. He is the former Regional Director for the Kansas City region and has worked in the Dallas, Denver, and Kansas City regions during the past 4 censuses in a variety of positions. Dennis's current responsibilities include oversight of the Dallas Regional Census Center and the 50 area census offices in a 12-state region. This includes a field staff of over 75,000 census workers. Please help me welcome Dennis Johnson.
you know, there's a benefit to speaking last. It's all been said. And if I might say so, it's been said much more eloquently than I could have. So thank you all for being here and being a part of this festivity. As Mark said, I've been around the census for a while, since prior to the 1980 census, not 1790, by the way, just 1980. And I had the good pleasure of living not far from here, just down the road in Kansas City, most of my life, and that's home. And my memories go back to this time of year and watching some of the classic games between Oklahoma and Nebraska, and enjoying that immensely. And glad to have Johnny here. So thank you for being a part of the team. So this office is here in Lincoln, but it represents the state of Nebraska. And we're very happy and proud to have this office here. We're even prouder to have people all across the state that are working toward a complete and accurate census. And that's not only census workers, but that's all the local officials and state officials who are on our side. And you see a representation of that here today. And that's going to help us make it through. I won't go back over some of the importance of the census because it's all been said. It's about power. It's about representation. It's about money. It's about your community getting its fair share of money. And it's about justice. It's about you and you and you, making sure you get all the rights that you're entitled to. That's what it's all about. So I don't have to talk more about that. But I am very proud to represent an organization that is truly of the people, for the people, and most importantly, by the people. The greatest part of this is I come around every 10 years and I work on a census, but every 10 years there's this groundswell of support in all of the local areas. It's by the people. The Census Bureau doesn't come in and take a census from anybody. The census is done by you. The census is done in your household. The workers of the census are people in your neighborhood. They're your neighbors. They're your community. And that's the great part of this. There's nothing controlled about this from some higher power. This is all about you. Conducting the 2020 census, as the Lieutenant Governor said, is going to be a massive undertaking. There is no question about that. It required years of planning and a massive effort. We're still planning some of the later operations. We've been planning since the 2010 census. We've been looking forward to this and looking at the challenges we will face. And we need thousands and thousands of people. And that's what part of this meeting is all about today. As we said, we're going to select somewhere between 75,000 and 100,000 people in the 12 states that I manage. That's the number of jobs we will have. To get that number of people, we will need to recruit over 250,000 people. And that's a lot of folks. And what was the unemployment rate you just mentioned? 3.5. 3.5? Most economists will tell you that that is no unemployment. Everybody that wants a job has one. Well, guess what? We have to find people regardless of that. We have to go out and find people who don't know they want to work for us right now. We have to make sure they understand it's important for them to work for us and to be a part of the census effort. We're looking to recruit somewhere around 17,000 people here in the state of Nebraska, just in this state alone. And there will be thousands of jobs at peak operations. So we need all of those folks. Many of them currently are working. Some of them are retired. Some are students. Some are homemakers who don't know they want a job. Guess what? We have to get the word out to them, and we need your help to do that. We need all of you to talk to your friends, your neighbors, talk to the groups you belong to, talk to folks at your schools, talk to your churches. Make sure that everyone knows that this is important. This is a big deal, and we need people to make sure it works well. So we're here to encourage you to spread the word. Please talk to any of the staff here. They will point you in the right direction as to how that operation goes and how you too can be a part of the census. I want to make sure that everyone here has an opportunity not only to participate, but to shape your future and the future of your community by being a part of the census. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dennis. It's always great to hear from you as we know you're covering a very broad territory, and we rely on your insight for coverage in Nebraska. Finally, we'd like all the speakers to come forwards and help us with the ribbon cutting ceremony, please. Governor, you get the big
What are we gonna do, all cut a piece? All at once? You've done this before.
On the count of three. 1, 2, and 3. This isn't so lethal after all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops, thank you. Very good. Thank you again to our great lineup of speakers and to everyone for attending today. This concludes the program, but we welcome you to join us for additional refreshments and great company. And we'd also invite you to check out the maps and other visuals on the walls, read the winning essays from the student essay winners who wrote about the 2020 census for the Nebraska Latino American Commission's Hispanic Heritage Month commemoration. We have also displayed other visuals created by the UNO Center for Public Affairs. This concludes the ceremony. Thank you all very much for attending.